I never imagined that one day I would be forced to choose between the two people I cared about most. I thought my relationship with Emily was strong, that we understood each other, that we respected each other's boundaries. But everything began to crack the moment she started showing resentment toward how close I was to my mom. At first, it was small comments, little sighs, looks she thought I didn't notice. Then it became arguments, accusations, and guilt-tripping that slowly drained every bit of peace I had. And on the night of my mom's birthday, when the room was filled with warmth, laughter, and everything a family celebration should be, Emily looked me dead in the eyes and delivered the words that shattered everything. "Your mom or me." In that moment, the air froze, the table went silent, and I realized this wasn't just a fight. It was a line she chose to cross, and there was no going back. I picked up the small gift bag from the passenger seat and took a deep breath before walking into the restaurant. It was my mom's favorite place, a quiet little spot she always chose for her birthday dinners. I had been looking forward to this night all week, hoping it would be simple, warm, and free of tension. Emily walked beside me, her arms crossed, her expression already showing a hint of annoyance as if the evening was an inconvenience rather than a celebration. I told myself she would warm up once we sat down, once she saw how happy my mom was to have us there. But the moment we stepped inside, Emily's smile was forced, her greeting stiff, and my mom noticed it immediately. Still, she pretended not to and welcomed Emily with her usual kindness. We sat down, ordered drinks, and for a brief moment, it seemed like the night might actually go smoothly. Then Emily started whispering small complaints under her breath. The table was too cramped. The lighting was unflattering. The menu was boring. I tried to ignore it, hoping she would settle down, but her irritation only grew. My mom, being the gentle person she is, asked Emily how her week had been, trying to make conversation. Emily rolled her eyes and said my mom should already know how stressful things had been, considering I never had time for her anymore. The table fell quiet. I felt a knot form in my stomach. My mom looked confused, and I could see she was trying to process what Emily meant. I stepped in quickly, trying to shift the topic, but Emily wasn't done. The food arrived, and before I could take my first bite, she leaned forward, her voice low but sharp, asking why I had to spend so much time with my mom when I had a girlfriend who needed attention. My mom looked down at her plate, clearly embarrassed, and something in me snapped. I told Emily to drop the subject. She didn't. Instead, she pushed her plate away and raised her voice just enough for the nearby tables to hear. She said she was tired of competing for my attention, tired of feeling second place, tired of dealing with a man who couldn't cut the cord. My mom's eyes widened, hurt flashing across her face, and the entire restaurant seemed to pause. I felt heat rising in my chest, anger mixing with disbelief. I told Emily this wasn't the time or place. But she wasn't listening. She stood up, pointing at me as if delivering a verdict. "Choose, right now, your mom or me." The words hung in the air like a slap. My mom stared at her napkin, her hands trembling slightly. I didn't hesitate. I stood up, placed my hand gently on my mom's shoulder, and told her we were leaving. Emily's face twisted in shock as I helped my mom out of her chair. We walked out of the restaurant, leaving Emily behind as she called after me, demanding an answer she had already received. And with that, the night that should have been a celebration became the turning point of everything that followed. As soon as I closed the car door after leaving the restaurant, my phone lit up with the first vibration. Then the second. Then a nonstop stream of buzzing that filled the silence like an alarm. Emily was calling. I let it ring. I focused on driving my mom home, on calming her down, on pretending that what had just happened wasn't echoing in my head. But by the time I parked the car, I had over 20 missed calls and a flood of messages waiting. I walked my mom inside, made sure she was okay, and promised her I'd handle everything. When I finally stepped back outside alone, the phone buzzed again. More notifications. More desperation. I opened the first message. It was long, frantic, full of apologies that didn't sound like apologies. Emily insisted she hadn't meant to embarrass my mom. She said she was overwhelmed, emotional, scared of losing me. She begged me to come back so we could talk it out like adults. Then the tone shifted. The next message accused me of abandoning her. Another said she couldn't believe I would humiliate her by walking out in front of everyone. A few minutes later, another message arrived, laced with insults about my loyalty and my inability to set boundaries. Then came the threats of breaking up, followed immediately by pleas for me not to leave her. It was emotional whiplash, each message contradicting the last. My phone wouldn't stop vibrating, and every new notification felt heavier than the one before. At one point, she sent a voice message. Her voice cracked as she said she didn't know what she'd do if I didn't answer. She sounded like she was on the verge of hyperventilating. But I had reached my limit. The dinner, the embarrassment, the selfishness, it all replayed in my mind, and for the first time I felt something break between us. I sat in my car, staring at the screen while another barrage of messages came in. Some were pleading. Some were angry. Some were cold and manipulative. She kept calling, and each time I declined, she called again within seconds. It was as if she couldn't comprehend silence. After nearly an hour of this, she sent a long paragraph about how relationships required sacrifice and how she deserved to be my priority over anyone else. That was the moment I understood she meant every word she said at the restaurant. She truly expected me to choose. And she genuinely believed she had the right to demand it. My hands were steady when I typed my response. It was only one sentence. Short. Direct. Final. I sent it without rereading. Tomorrow morning, the movers will come. The moment I hit send, the phone went silent for a full 10 seconds. Then the notifications erupted again, panicked, disbelieving, furious. But I didn't read any more of them. I put the phone face down, leaned back in the seat, and breathed for the first time that night. I knew the next morning wouldn't be easy. But I also knew there was no turning back. The movers arrived exactly at 9 in the morning, their truck rumbling into the apartment parking lot while the sun was still low and soft. I stood there watching them step out, clipboards in hand, ready to work, while my stomach tightened with a mixture of dread and relief. I knew this moment was coming, but the reality of it hit harder than I expected. Before I could greet them, the front door of the apartment swung open, and Emily appeared, her hair messy, eyes swollen, wearing the same clothes from the night before. She froze when she saw the moving truck. Then she looked at me, disbelief flooding her face. "You're actually doing this," she whispered, her voice trembling. I didn't answer. I simply told the movers to start with the bedroom. That's when Emily suddenly rushed toward me, grabbing my arm with both hands. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she begged me to stop, saying she hadn't slept all night, saying she didn't mean anything she said at the restaurant. She clung to me like she was drowning. But all I felt was exhaustion, the kind that settles deep in your bones. When the movers began carrying out the first boxes, she panicked. She followed them into the apartment, trying to block the doorway, shouting that they had no right to touch our things. They hesitated and looked at me, waiting for direction. I told them to keep going. That set her off completely. Her voice rose higher and higher, and she accused me of abandoning her, humiliating her, punishing her for one mistake. I didn't argue with her. Arguing felt pointless. Instead, I walked past her and began gathering the last of my clothes, while the movers worked around us. Emily followed me from room to room, begging me to talk. Every time I stayed silent, she grew more frantic. Then, out of nowhere, her expression changed. She stopped crying, stopped shouting, stopped moving. She stood completely still in the middle of the living room and said in a quiet, steady voice, "I'm pregnant." The movers froze. I turned to look at her, and she held my gaze with an oddly calm smile, like she had just revealed something life-changing and expected everything to stop. I asked her when she found out. She said last week. I asked why she hadn't told me earlier. She said she wanted the moment to be special. Something about the way she said it, too rehearsed, too sudden, too convenient, made the air in the room feel colder. I asked if she had taken a test. She hesitated for a fraction of a second. Then she said yes. I asked to see it. Her face faltered. She said she threw it away. I told her we could get another one. Right now. She went pale. Her hands shook. And before she could come up with another excuse, her mother walked into the apartment. She must have driven over when Emily called her earlier. Her mom took one look at Emily's face, then at mine, and asked what was going on. When I explained what Emily claimed, her mother's expression shifted instantly. Confusion, then realization, then embarrassment. "Emily," her mom said quietly, "are you lying?" Emily's eyes widened with panic. She stammered, denying it, but her mother wasn't convinced. Neither were the movers. Neither was I. Her mom apologized to me under her breath before stepping outside, clearly ashamed. Emily collapsed onto the couch, sobbing again, the lie unraveling completely. I told the movers to keep packing. Within an hour, everything I owned was in the truck. As I walked out for the last time, Emily didn't scream or chase after me. She just sat there, small and shaking, realizing the one card she tried to play had destroyed whatever was left. I closed the door behind me without looking back. I thought things would finally calm down once I moved out, but the quiet barely lasted a few days. The first sign of trouble came on a Tuesday morning when my phone buzzed with a message from a coworker asking if everything was okay. I didn't understand what he meant until I arrived at the office and saw Emily standing outside the front doors, clutching a small cardboard box to her chest. Her eyes lit up the second she spotted me, as if she had been waiting for hours. I felt my stomach drop. Before I could react, she rushed toward me, calling my name loud enough for everyone in the lobby to hear. She said we needed to talk, that she didn't care if it was at work, that avoiding her was cruel and childish. I kept my voice low, asking her to leave, telling her this wasn't the place. She didn't care. She pushed the box into my hands, insisting I take it. When I looked down, I realized it was filled with every sentimental item from our relationship. Photos, ticket stubs, old notes, small gifts. But instead of handing it over calmly, she snatched the box back, ripped the lid off, and dumped everything onto the floor right in the middle of the lobby. The sound echoed sharply, frames breaking, glass scattering, papers fluttering everywhere. People turned to stare. Some whispered. Some backed away. I felt every pair of eyes on me. Emily dropped to her knees, frantically gathering the items she had just thrown, crying as if she didn't understand how they ended up on the ground. She accused me of ruining everything, of throwing her away like trash, of choosing my mother over her. I tried to help her stand, but she pulled away violently, screaming that I didn't get to touch her after breaking her. Security was called within minutes. 2 guards approached and asked her to step outside, but she refused, gripping a broken photo frame and insisting she wasn't leaving without closure. The guards finally escorted her out, while she kept twisting around to shout accusations at me through the glass doors. I felt humiliation, burning in every inch of my skin. When I walked into the elevator, no one said a word. They didn't need to. Their silence was loud enough. But Emily wasn't finished. She waited outside the building for the next 3 hours, packing back and forth, sending me messages every few minutes. Some begged me to come talk. Some accused me of hiding. Some were so spiteful, I couldn't believe they came from the same person. At lunch, One of the security guards told me she had tried to sneak back into the building by following behind another employee. They stopped her and warned her that they would call the police if she didn't leave. She finally walked away, but not before shouting one last threat that echoed down the street. When I left work that day, I checked every corner of the parking lot to make sure she wasn't there. It didn't matter. An hour later, she started calling again. Then she switched to leaving voicemails where she cried, pleaded, rambled, and contradicted herself over and over. She was unraveling, and the more I tried to distance myself, the harder she clawed her way toward me. It was the moment I realized something harsher than heartbreak. I was no longer dealing with a wounded ex. I was dealing with someone who refused to accept reality. The calls didn't stop, and the messages didn't slow down. But when she realized I wasn't responding to any of them, Emily switched tactics. Instead of coming after me directly, she went after the people around me. The first person she contacted was my best friend, Tyler. He texted me screenshots of her long, dramatic paragraphs claiming I had abandoned her without explanation, that she was heartbroken, confused, and terrified about the future. She framed herself as the victim and implied that I had suddenly cut her out for no reason. Tyler didn't buy it, but he warned me that she was reaching out to everyone in our friend's circle. Within a day, 3 more friends sent similar messages, all with Emily's pleas, accusations, and twisted versions of events. She said I had been cold for months. She said my mom hated her and manipulated me into leaving. She even claimed she had proof of how toxic my family was, though she never showed anything. When none of my friends gave her the sympathy she wanted, she escalated again. She showed up at my mom's house. My mom called me afterward, shaken but calm, telling me that Emily and her mother had arrived unannounced, standing on the porch with forced smiles, insisting they just wanted to talk. My mom tried to keep things polite, but Emily started crying, begging her to help fix things between us, claiming she felt like she was losing her entire life. Her mother chimed in, saying Emily was fragile, emotional, under stress, and that a breakup would destroy her. She hinted that my mom should convince me to reconsider. My mom refused. She told them gently but firmly that the relationship was over and that this conversation was not appropriate. Emily broke down again, accusing my mom of never liking her, of trying to push her out, of turning me against her. My mom ended up having to close the door while Emily was still pleading on the porch. I felt sick hearing all of it, but it didn't end there. If anything, that failure only pushed her further. She moved the entire situation onto social media. One morning, I woke up to dozens of notifications from people sending me screenshots of her posts. She had written a long emotional rant about how she had been betrayed by the person she trusted most, how she was the victim of family interference, and how she believed in unconditional love while others didn't. Her followers flooded the comments with sympathy, telling her she deserved better, calling me heartless without even knowing what had really happened. Then my family stepped in. My sister wrote a comment telling the truth, that Emily had publicly humiliated my mom, lied about being pregnant, and continued to harass me. That opened the floodgates. A full-blown comment war broke out between Emily, her friends, my family, and strangers who had no idea what was actually going on. Emily posted screenshots taken out of context, cropped messages, emotional selfies of her crying. She painted herself as someone abandoned by a cruel partner being manipulated by his family. I didn't respond to any of it. Not publicly. Not privately. I stayed silent because feeding the chaos would only make things worse. Instead, I focused on finding a new place to live, somewhere quiet and far away from the drama. Every day it became clearer that this wasn't heartbreak for her anymore. It was obsession mixed with desperation, fueled by the belief that if she kept pushing hard enough, she could force me back into her life. But all she was doing was confirming exactly why I had walked away. By the time I finally moved into my new apartment, I felt like I could breathe for the first time in weeks. The space was small, quiet, and completely mine, untouched by chaos or arguments or the constant tension that had filled my old life. For a brief moment, I let myself believe that everything was finally settling down. But the calm didn't last long. On my second evening there, while I was unpacking the last box, a loud knock echoed through the hallway. It wasn't frantic or violent, just persistent. 3 knocks. A pause. 3 more. My stomach dropped. I already knew who it was before I even looked through the peephole. Emily stood outside the door, arms crossed, eyes red from crying, her posture tense like she was bracing for impact. The moment she heard me shift behind the door, she started talking through it, her voice muffled but urgent. She said she knew I had moved. She said she deserved to be part of the conversation. She said she wasn't leaving until we figured things out. I didn't open the door. I told her to go home. She ignored me completely and launched into a long, spiraling monologue about how we could start fresh if I just let her in. When I still didn't open the door, she switched to anger. She accused me of being childish, cold, manipulative. She demanded I stop punishing her. After a few minutes, she began pounding harder, the knocks turning into full fists against the wood, each hit sharper than the last. I threatened to call the police if she didn't leave. She laughed through the door, saying I wouldn't dare. Then she said she would just wait outside until I got over myself. I walked away from the door and let her talk. But she didn't just talk. She started shouting, then crying, then blamming, then begging. Her voice echoed down the hallway, and I could hear my neighbors opening their doors, whispering, trying to figure out what was happening. I hated every second of it. Eventually, one of the neighbors must have called the building manager, because he came upstairs and told her she needed to leave or the police would be called. She told him she was my girlfriend. I corrected her through the door. She broke down again, saying the breakup wasn't real, that I was just angry and confused, that she knew me better than I knew myself. The manager repeated his warning. Emily stepped back and started packing in front of my door, breathing hard, muttering under her breath. Then, out of nowhere, she tried to shove past the manager and reach for the door handle, like she thought she could force her way inside. That was when another neighbor came out and told her she needed to stop or someone was calling the police for real. Emily froze for a moment, her chest rising and falling, her hands shaking. Then she snapped. She started pounding on the door again, screaming that she wasn't leaving without me, that she didn't care what anyone said, that she was meant to be here. That was when I finally called the police. When the officers arrived, Emily tried to play the victim, crying, saying she was scared, saying she just needed to talk to her boyfriend. But the officers asked me directly if she had permission to be there. I said no. They asked if I wanted her removed. I said yes. Emily's expression changed instantly from pleading to betrayed, as if she couldn't believe I would let it come to this. The officers remained calm, but firm as they told her she needed to leave, and that if she returned again, she could be charged with harassment. She tried arguing with them, but they didn't budge. Eventually, she had no choice but to leave, still shouting that I was making a mistake, that she loved me, that she wasn't giving up. But she left. The hallway finally went quiet. I closed the door, locked it, and stood there for a long moment, letting the silence settle over me like a blanket. For the first time, the reality sank in. She could no longer reach me, no matter how hard she tried. And slowly, the chaos that had consumed my life began to fade, one painful echo at a time. When the dust finally settled, I found myself standing in the quiet of my apartment, surrounded by the echoes of everything that had happened. There was no relief, no triumph, just a heavy stillness that came with accepting the truth I had been avoiding for far too long. I realized that love, no matter how strong, cannot survive when built on control, insecurity, and emotional ultimatums. I cared for Emily deeply, but caring for someone should never mean sacrificing the people who shaped me or the parts of myself that matter most. With time, the anger faded, leaving only gratitude for the clarity the chaos had given me. My relationship with my mom grew stronger, steadier, and more honest than before, unburdened by the tension that had once hovered between us. And as for Emily, I hoped she would eventually find the healing she needed, even if her journey moved in a direction away from mine. In the end, I walked forward carrying the lesson that real love doesn't force you to choose. It supports, trusts, and grows without tearing you apart.